Hey YouTube, how's it going? Well, it's time. Time to start building this dream system that's been coming together. And the first part of that is to get my tower ready to receive it. And so, without further ado, let's get busy. Okay, here we are, ready to get busy with this thing. And as you can see, this thing's kind of a mess. It's gathered an awful lot of dust, and I know these two fans here don't look very good, but trust me, when the thing was sitting upright on my desk, they were in absolutely the perfect position. But they are also the first thing that I need to remove. Now, let's get this one out of here. And yes, these things were held in place with pipe cleaners woven through their mounting sockets and through holes in the case. It sounds kludgy as all get up, but you know something? It worked. But these fans are not going to do it for the new system, because the new system is capable of generating a lot more heat than these guys are able to deal with. So, get those out of there. Let's see, IDE cable. Other IDE cable for the CD-ROMs. I'll just tuck that inside that bag there. Disconnect everything, including the main header off the motherboard. There. Power supply stuff is out of the way. CD-ROM audio cable. Front panel connectors. Floppy cable. Yes, I actually still have a 3.5-inch floppy hooked up in this tower. I don't use it very often, but I do have it. Okay. Now, unbolt motherboard. The motherboard is a pretty decent one for its day. Got it about 2007 or so, I think it was. And it is an ASRock K7 VM3. And the CPU on it, I believe, is an AMD Sempron 1.7 gigahertz. When I first got this system together and got it running, it was the best, most powerful machine I'd ever had. My, how things change. One more. Okay, lift out the old board. Save the screws. And here it is. Not bad. Tiny, but not bad. At least when it was working. It started to die in March and April of 2010. This was the main computer I'd been using to do all my videos on. It worked, it did the job, although videos generally speaking took about 2 hours to render for a 5-minute video, you know. Not exactly what I call great. But at the time, it was the best I had. In April of 2010 is when I bought a new laptop, the Toshiba laptop. And the timing was perfect because I got the laptop about a week before this system died. Okay, unbolting the old power supply. Pull this sucker out. Okay, one power supply removed. And look at this spaghetti mess of wires. For the longest time, this sort of thing was standard. That's the way everything was done. At least everything I've seen. Okay. Alright, the next thing I need to do is take a few minutes here and a rag and clean this case out. So I'm going to do that and I'll catch up with you. Okay, I've got the case pretty well cleaned up for the most part. And then the original mounting brackets, see this little header here, and there's another one here for the motherboard hold down screws to go into. This one is loose, it needs to be tightened up. There we go. Okay, they were originally here and here, and for this motherboard that I'm putting in, I had to move them down here and here so that they will accept an ATX motherboard, which is what this new one is. Now I'm just going to set this down on here and make sure that these screw holes line up. And yes, we're good to go. They line up perfect. Now, I'm not ready to put this in yet, so I'm going to set it over here to one side and get to what I am ready to put in, and that is brand new 850 watt power supply. Okay, got my mounting screws. 850 watts of power in place. And now the next step, which for you guys is only going to be a few seconds, but for me is going to be a day or two as I wait for the heatsink thermal compound to arrive. That's one of the things that hasn't shown up yet, and I can't take the next step and go ahead and get the motherboard ready to put in until that shows up, because I know better than to not put fresh compound on the heatsink. Well, it is now the next day, and I have just returned from a 98-mile trip to go to Radio Shack and get these two little capacitors, which are going to replace the bad ones on that board. And now, let's get out the soldering iron and heat these things up and get them off of here. The one downside of modern circuit boards is that, generally speaking, they use a silver solder to put these things in. And that can be a problem to melt when what you've got is a 30-watt pencil iron. Okay, I've got a bad angle here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, get these things removed, and I'll be back. Okay, it took me a little bit of doing, but I did get them suckers on there. Now, clip a little heat sink on there and apply some solder and get them welded down. Go ahead and cut the excess off of these leads. And I know this isn't a wire cutter, but it does the job. My wire cutter seems to have been misplaced. Okay. Not very pretty, but it'll work. Okay, now that the capacitors are taken care of, proceed to the next step. Which is the installation of the heatsink and fan assembly. Now this heatsink is a little bit different. Instead of having a nylon push-through clamp, this thing has spring-loaded screws that screw into a back plate that goes on the other side of the motherboard. And I think that's going to work out better. So, and now we get out the thermal paste for the heatsink. And apply a layer of that onto the CPU. Alright. Now, let's see. Loosen up these screws. Take that back plate off. Now this part goes on the back of the motherboard behind the CPU, lining up these holes right here. Now hold that in place. And put the fan down on there. Removing the little plastic piece that was there. That's good enough. Takes just a little bit of pressure here on these screws to get them to reach and grab hold. Alright, we are in place. Connect fan's power line right here. There. Heatsink and CPU cooler in place. Now, let's set this sucker down in here and bolt it down. There. I got you in there in spite of yourself. Or maybe to spite you. There. Alright. And now for the memory. Now, Hearts on Fire, when he sent this, included 4 1 gigabyte sticks of memory. But there's something else. You see, Ronnie Mac 73 also contributed to this system by sending a GPU, and along with it, he packed in 4 sticks of 2 gigabyte memory. And just for grins, I'm going to snap that stuff in there. Just a second. Oh. And breathe. And fine. Number 4. For a grand total of 8 gigabytes of RAM. I can't tell you how freaking cool that is. In the era of computers, the first computer I ever had a whopping 32 kilobytes of memory. Only about 28 of which the basic language operating system could use. You had to use machine language to get to the rest of it because it was actually set aside for the graphics display. Okay. Mainboard power. Over the years, I've had an assortment of graphics cards, ranging from your very basic, very basic VGA graphics card to, like I believe I had a Diamond S3, and more recently a 32 megabyte ATI Rage Pro, which when it was new, that was all the rage. Everybody had to have those. And now, I gotta tell you, that is a graphics card. This thing is almost a foot long, has its own 3-inch fan, and feels like it weighs about 5 or 6 pounds. And takes up 2 slots, 2 back panel slots, as it goes into this PCIe 16 port. This one here, plug in thusly, and this plugs in here, simply because I'm sure it's the only one, it's the only one that fits there, so it must be right. Here is power for DVD drive, and CD-ROM, and now I need to get out this little baby, the Q connector the documents call it, which is where you plug all your front panel cables onto this, and then this plugs down to the motherboard over here in the corner. Alright. This whole assembly connects here. Which is still a little tricky because there isn't much room to maneuver here. But it's in place. Okay. I have a floppy drive cable. I'm not going to mess with that one right now because, well, frankly, these days there isn't much use for floppy drives. I will eventually hook it up, but I'm not going to mess with it right now. Okay. Line you up. Okay. We're solid. 2 terabytes of hard drive. That is awesome. Okay. Plugs in there. Got the east side of the cable. Let's see. It's keyed so you can't put it on backwards. I like that. And this one is down here to the solder number 1 connector. We're good to go. I'm going to set it down here in the bottom of this bay. And I think that will be just fine. And now I'm going to set this thing upright. Oh. And this cable right here, to run it back through here and hook it up for secondary IDE, because it's going to be operating the CD and DVD. I may have to change that cable out because it doesn't appear to be quite long enough. Alright. Now, yeah, this cable is a little bit longer, so it'll reach. So I'm going to cut to where I've got this thing set up on the desktop and ready to fire up. Get back in just a few minutes because I'm also going to take a break. Okay, everything's all set up. We're hooked up to the monitor, which is currently saying no signal. Of course, the unit is turned off, so let's apply some power back here. That light on the motherboard indicates to me that there is power there. And now the power switch on the front panel. Another light comes on here on the GPU. Presumably the thing should be running. What I'm seeing over here is still no signal. So I'm not really clued into what's not happening here. As far as I can tell, everything was put together right, but nothing's happening. And I think in light of that, I'm going to shut her down. And by the way, that CPU fan is nice and quiet. I appreciate that. That's good. I'm going to shut her down and see what happens later on. See if maybe somebody can tell me what it is that I have not done right. Obviously something is not right. And as far as the graphic connection to the GPU, to the monitor over there, there's two connectors on the GPU, and I have tried both of them. So no clue just yet. But things are together, and it will be running sometime soon, I'm sure.